Conte, founder of Spiral Web Designs, is my guest today. And I was just saying I thought you would have a much more like Italian sounding accent. So
everyone thinks that, so you weren't wrong to think it.
Oh, that's all right then. So what does Spiral Web Designs do? And yeah, how did you end up becoming the founder?
Yeah, cool. So Spiral Orb Designs is
Spiral Orb.
Sorry?
Spiral Orb. I said Spiral
Oh,
Web.
yeah, that's okay. So Spiral, essentially I founded it 4 years ago. I would have been about 26. So 3 years into my first business. I was doing a lot of my own websites, built my own brands, things like that. And then I actually built an online platform. And so it came to a point where I had to outsource that. And so I did. And like most people, I invested it, spent a lot of money. And across that, my brand was pretty butchered. My website was horrible. And that's when I learned that really the people that were working behind my website were just people from overseas. And I know that the very first thought was like, I spent all this money and it was just people from Fiverr, and I was very angry. So after I got past the admittance of that it was a bad investment, I just scrapped the whole thing, rebuilt it. And then a good friend, she encouraged me to actually start it. Because I used to help a lot of people with it, just on the side. And then I kind of looked at it, and it was my way of, I guess, sticking it to the people who rip people off. So I essentially started out of anger. And I knew, because I was a burnt client, I knew what the pain points were for other people. And over time, the types of people that we were attracting were just really good community-driven people, very good-hearted, saw the best in everyone. And the problem with that is when you see the best in everyone, your weakness is naivety, and that's easy to be taken advantage of. So we made it a mission that we would educate as much as we can, and that if any bad digital practices were to come into the vicinity of our clients and they were in question, they would come to us and we'd be able to say, yeah, no, they're pretty good, or no, that's wrong. So, yeah.
Oh, so you've kind of become a watchdog almost.
Yeah. And it all comes back to the branding around our particular spider. So it's a golden Orbweaver, which you can mainly find up in Queensland and other hot areas around the world. But there's a couple of traits that spider has, and one of the traits is their webs are so strong that it even affects birds and bats. If a bird and bat flies through that, they're kind of like, because they even made a beautiful yellow dress out of the silk of that spider. That's how strong it was. So yeah.
Were you really fascinated by spiders as a kid? Is that where this comes from?
No.
Okay. All right.
Hated spiders. I absolutely hated them. However, as a branding specialist, the symbology that I was looking for had to encompass a spider for 2 reasons. One, because it's obvious, web designer, so there's an obvious relativity to it. The deeper psychological aspect of it is that most people are scared of spiders, but the thing is, spiders are actually really good to have around. And so I use something that in the web design industry, a lot of people are fearful of web design. So I used that, and to show a particular spider that is actually really good to keep around. If you have this spider, and it's big, it's not like a really small spider, it's very noticeable. If you have that around, you're safe. And so it's rewiring people's idea of the spider and realizing that it's not actually as scary as it is. I think I read somewhere it was one of the top 10 friendliest spiders voted as well. So yeah.
Are they the ones, I think I see them in Sydney sometimes, they curl themselves up into leaves? So they have these curled up leaves on their web and then they live inside of them?
No, so I know which ones you're talking about. So these ones, I think you can, I'm pretty certain you can only find them in Queensland.
Oh, okay.
So they're the ones that sit right in the middle of the web.
They're just giant and they just hang out there.
Yeah,
That,
it's literally, they're just this big thing. You notice them in the forest and you're like, I would not want to walk through that. But
that's fascinating because first of all, you have kind of a Batman origin story where you're scared of spiders and then you adopt them as your logo. So I like that. But also, it just sticks in your mind. You don't forget the spider brand. Like it's just so in your face and really like it's on the front page of your website. Like this crawl into the spider's den, and it's something that scares us or that's so psychologically significant to us really sticks in your mind more than like a I don't know, like if you did I mean, you know, I've seen like random like security logos or fruit logos, like very plain, like toned down things. They don't stick in your head like this does.
yeah, and that's all intentional. Even the fact that Spiral and why Spiral, like the reason I found that spider, the word dynamic is very important to me in multiple ways, in movement, in thinking, expression. And so when I did some research around dynamic, spiral dynamics came up, which is actually a psychological model, which is the hierarchy of societies and just goes deep with like consciousness kind of thinking. And so when I combined spiral dynamics, which I have a deep love for psychology, as with branding you have to, then with the spiral spiders, the golden Orbweaver struck out. So that's why specific of why you use a particular mascot, animal, something that's already created in the earth, in the world, whether it's an idea or that something already exists, you have to capture all those deep symbology that's really strongly represents the brand and what you're intending to do with it.
That's fascinating. You seem to have the mind of a real artist. Like I'm personally interested in patterns and symbolism in terms of like mythology and religion and stuff like that. But you're actually applying this to make money instead of just wanking over old texts. That's it's really useful.
Yeah, well, if you look at any strong brand out there, they encompass all this. They go very deep into that, and you don't need a lot to like. Psychology is so vast and deep that within matter of seconds, we're tapping into people's life experiences. So a spider is super easy because of relativity or fear, and because of just be able to rewire that experience if you present it and show it in a certain way, and then it becomes memorable. And that's the big brands know how to do that. Like that's and that's why you pay what you pay for to get all of all that understanding. So, yeah.
You mentioned the word dynamic is really important to you. Why is that?
I count because of my background with my last business, movement, dynamic, and the flow of the body, how it moves, was more crucial to me than end result kind of per se, like training to look a certain way. I found that because of that, like a lot of the training that I used to do was a lot of animal movements, and when you collectively do all that together, you basically it's like you've embodied every movement, every animal that's out there. Like I used to train the 4 animals that I mainly used to train around was a lion, a monkey, a cat, and a panda. Believe it or not. And a panda was more specific because if you look at them, they have this real free flow nature. They are cheeky. They're kind of just lazy around. But when they fall or roll, they just go with it. And so you've got that aspect of it. Then you got the lion, where it's just more about strength. You got the monkey that's more about swinging, and the cat where it's like more so balancing and whatnot. So yeah, I thought that had to be super important because it grabbed my personality, and then it needed a brand isn't directly an entity of you, but it does reflect traits that you have. That's why brands are so unique. And almost like one brand can never be the same if you do branding properly. Just the problem is a lot of people think they are the brand. So they make the brand entirely, the entity of the brand entirely them. And it doesn't necessarily will be attracting the exact people that you want to speak to. Similar, but not the exact, if that makes sense.
So a brand kind of focuses a part of your personality instead of the entire thing.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. And I've seen where people get lost in the idea that the brand is them, and more so, if the brand is your name, that's even more reason to understand that it's not you. It's still a separate entity as you. And there's only really 3 areas that you need to focus on when creating a brand in terms of what it's there. First of all, it's there to make money and create a business, and then achieve goals and whatever you want that brand to do back into the world. So you've got to look at who's the ideal audience that is actually attracted to the brand, and people who would partner up really well with the brand, who share your audience as well. And then any opportunities, anything that comes out, stands out, so that you're spotted really clearly amongst the crowd of others who share your industry. That's how you skyrocket and then have those big opportunities too. Because at the end of the day, every single person behind the decision making is a human mind, and a human mind is psychology, and you're tapping it into the same wireframe of that.
Interesting. Can you give me, so I guess, can you give me an example more of how you would kind of focus instead of you putting your, because you're talking about personal brands, and there's this really interesting discrepancy, like you said, between a personal brand and a personality, a person. And so I wonder if you have any examples of like ways that people could tweak their personal brand to become more of a brand and not so much a display of the entire spectrum of their personality.
Yeah, so I always start with like the big vision of what you're trying to portray, because that's essentially, you create a brand to do something more. Of course, you can create a brand to just make you money and give you the business, but that's going to be to tug that along will be tough if you just stay there. A brand is for people. That's, people invest in a brand. So everything you make about a brand has to be for someone else. Therefore, it can't just be you, because a human being, all we need to survive will be connection, food, water, and shelter. Like, that's the basic necessities. A business doesn't need any of that. Perhaps a bit of connection, but really, if you bare minimum, the thing of what makes a business alive and stay alive is money. And so that's what it eats. It eats money. And so money can only be given to it. Food you can grow, water you can source, but money for a business, a brand, an idea that doesn't have arms or legs, that can't do it itself, it needs to have money given to it. So therefore, the attraction model for it has to be tapping into the psychology of what it is that the brand's there to do. And the very first thing that why people look at a brand or notice a brand is because of the vicinity it's in, based on the experience of the individual. So if I elaborate on that, it's, if you kind of imagine your life as an algorithm, like Facebook, Instagram, all your social medias, you're not going to see the 1,000 friends at the same time. You're only going to see the top 20, 40 posts of people that share experiences that are most relatable to you, that you engage with. The brand does the same thing. So if you're talking about a movement, a change, a huge vision, you're doing it to interrupt someone's algorithm of 40 and be like, oh, based on my personal experiences, I noticed your brand now because it's speaking directly in line with what I have experienced or what I believe in and what I value. And now all of a sudden, that out of all those 1,000 people, brands, your brand is now in the top 40, which is what you want. And it's in front of the ideal person because you were so specific in the psychology of how you wanted to present, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So personally, I just started doing this like podcast. I've only had a few interviews, and I do a lot of things in my life. I play a lot of music. Like I guess right now I'm focusing on just making, there's like this website called BeatStars, and you can make beats for rappers, and I'm doing stuff like that.
Cool.
But playing music online, and I do book reviews too, and I've just realized that I haven't niched down at all. I mean, I have this broad and quite expansive array of interests, and I feel quite attached to them. I don't know if I want to stop. And especially because I have such a small user base, like I probably only have 500 followers on Instagram or something. And so would you recommend for building a personal brand that I specifically focus on one thing, or do you think I should continue a wide variety of interests and work from there?
I definitely go for the focus. I'm a writer. Okay,
Mm.
so along the fourth brand I've built was my personal writing brand. I think we're about to go live with the website for that. So my team did my graphic design team did the branding, my web design team's doing the website. So, but this is a great example of that. So I love writing creative writing and poetry. But
Mm.
my four niche areas that I love to write about is death, life, chaos, and love. So they're my four main elements. And I'm very specific in the areas of the human condition. So I can write about anything if I really wanted to, but that's where I'm known as. And I've been doing that for now 5 years of just consistently writing and putting things out there. But the brand is specifically speaking to more so for women, and it's more so women between, you can say almost like from 30, 35 up to about 55, around that sort of space that really is attracted to the writing style. But beyond that, I've already pre-planned why that writing is specific to them, how the relationship with them works with my brand and them, how that then translates to their children, the teenagers, to be more specific. And actually my writing is a leeway from them to the teenagers. But the teenagers aren't the ones that can financially invest or fall in love with it straight away. It's more so the mothers or the parents. Most of the audience who loves my writing are women from that perspective, which already that's all pre-planned. That's planned before the actual action's not the word, or implementation of I'm doing this and this is the next thing why and this is what's going to happen and here's my first book and then the next book and then other books that come out and how, like, all of that pre-planned.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think do you feel like it might disrupt some of the I want to say some of the genuineness or some of the truth in your writing when you're writing specifically for an audience?
No, because there's still going to be something you love. So like everything I write about is specifically to what I love. But rather than trying to branch and just write about all different styles, I've niched down to a specific of what I want to present. And over time you get to see your favorite type of people, and it's always a very similar type of person. And again, it depends on what you're doing. If you're just doing it for the hobby, then fair enough. But like for me, I've got this big vision that I imagine these series to be in everyone's bookshelf across the world, and these teenagers to fall in love with the books, but also the evolution from that is to be able to team up with other professionals and then release a course that is very it's not it's what's the opposite of mainstream, like very unconventional approach to be able to teach just a small period of their life of these young teenagers concepts that aren't really taught at school. And so there's the evolution from something of just a creative piece and how you can project that even further.
What kind of concepts would you want to teach them?
I love the concept of death. I think humanity doesn't explore it to the degree of what it can actually showcase and teach. And why I say that is death is a very ritualistic approach in our Western culture. It's also very feared and unknown. And there's a deep psychology of death that isn't actually explored because there's so much fear and trauma that's already installed. Like one of my favorite books is Denial of Death. One of the starting parts of the book, they explain how a child squishes an ant, right? And the child has no idea of death, doesn't understand the concept, sees an ant crawling crushes it with his finger, looks up, the ant's not there anymore, but then he looks at his finger, it's just this crumbled thing. And he thinks, or she thinks, what? What happened? Like, what? That makes no sense. I didn't think, oh my God, that's death. It's only when we witness it for the first time in the reactions of others who have learned it from the reactions of others do we associate massive trauma to it because of this unknown, because we don't know what happens next, because religion says one thing, spirituality says another thing. And so the unfamiliar is something we're scared of. And you can see that in the day-to-day. That fear, us getting uncomfortable in our lives, is the same fear. And yet when we step out and do something uncomfortable, for example, like us doing a podcast right now, for someone else, this is like, could be one of the most scariest experiences for them, right? So that is a fear to try to avoid, like death. And so, but if they step into that, then they do the podcast. Usually what happens with most, I'd say pretty much majority of things when you do the scary thing, is there's a reward. And so I like to go meta in that sort of thinking, that even if when death occurs on a life experience, that afterwards, whatever happens has to still be something more beautiful, because that unfamiliar is exactly the same felt in a more metaphorical perspective in our day-to-days. So yeah, those are like concepts that I tap into and try to aim to rewire one's thinking of death, so that they don't just carry this trauma when they eventually, or if not already, have lost someone that they've loved, and created this whole paradigm around that subconscious fear.
I read an essay one time about it was a nurse, and she was talking about how people from the country would, when grandma goes to the hospital, she's in hospice, and you kind of have this option of like, you can try to keep her, she's 90 years old, you can try to keep her on chemotherapy, you can keep her on a ventilator, all that, or you could just let her pass peacefully. And people in the country are like, oh, they've seen animals pass. They see the cycle of life. They see the harvest every year, and they just go, okay, we want to make her comfortable. We want to make sure she's happy. Like, let's move her on, in a peaceful way. And then people from the city are like, no, we have to try more. Like it's such a, I don't want to say selfish, because it's just very human to want to cling on to something, but they're so scared of death that they want to have her there for those extra few precious moments. Like if you talk to hospital workers, my mom's a nurse, and she talks about how she works in ICU with a lot of older people, and like some of them, their families don't want to let them go. And so you're doing CPR in this, 80, 90-year-old person, you're like breaking their ribs. It's like, how do you want that? Do you want them to like go through that experience, or do you want to just let them pass gracefully? And it is interesting how we have this very traumatized response towards death in our society. I think part of it, is because we don't see the bodies. Actually, we kind of, as soon as someone dies, we call, the mortician or whoever we call, they come and they take the bodies away. Whereas I think I've heard people say that if you, like in Jewish culture, for instance, you have to stay with the body until it's put in the ground. Somebody has to be with the body, and there's rituals around, there's reasons about why that is, but I think actually maybe one of the reasons why that is because you get to say goodbye, and you get to have that experience of like accepting the loss and accepting the death and kind of grieving over the body. Whereas I think now we just want to take it away. It's like, it's almost like waste, or like, something to flush down the toilet. Like we want it away from us as quickly as possible. And that I think causes some trauma.
Yeah. And I think it carries on as well in terms of how we transcend a person's life. Like for me, I've lost both my parents, and one of the things I have learned in being very observant from, I guess, the ritual of the funeral, the wake, the process, where you got to stand when it's time. Like it's so processed in a way that amplifies emotion or grief. That's a traumatic response as well. And I looked at it and was like, I was I was just being very observant with how it was being presented, opposed to just being in the emotion. Now, obviously, I was in emotion as well. But what I have learned specifically was how, when that grief, sorry, not grief, because we all go, like, healthy do go through grief. But when we have that trauma, one of the main elements of what I've noticed that people tend to do, and more so if it's really unresolved, is they evolve the person who used to be a human and they move it towards something that, for example, like a tombstone. So you will go to the tombstone and you would visit that person, and you'd say you're visiting that person. You'd go there, you'd speak to it, and that's a mechanism of coping with as well. But there is still this I guess, going back to the transcendence, there's still this thing about it where we've just basically changed the concept of how we treat it into something else, and that's just the evolution of it, opposed to seeing it for what it is. And yeah, I mean, like, the concept there we could probably talk about for ages, and it's pretty deep. But yeah, they're the elements that I've spotted, and yet the same, like, those people, it could be 20 years, 30 years, 5 years, can still carry so much pain as if they've lost that person yesterday. And that's where, in a psychological perspective, I see it as, there's there's a lot of stuff that still hasn't been dealt with.
Yeah. Even people say it never stops hurting, but you learn to deal with it and stuff. And I wonder if that needs to be true necessarily. Like, if somehow holding on to that pain constantly has to be part of the process.
Yeah. See, that's so I lost my mum in 2015 and my dad in 2019, and that was, my mum was unexpected, so it was sudden. And it was super traumatic in the way it happened. And the very thing that I first did when it did happen was, I am going to tell everyone I'm okay and dealing it on my own. I lived on my own at the time, and I purposely went into the depths of hell, that's what I call it, to live through everything that was occurring, and letting my mind go so deep and go through that pain, opposed to doing the sticking around people, using other methods to, I guess, get on with it and let that eventually just onion itself up and then be unresolved. And when someone talks about it, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I miss them, or you break down every now and then. It's only after probably a year, I had a really lovely teacher that helped me learn a lot more about the linguistic aspect of it, which helped a lot more with my clients. But one of the things I always said was, I wanted, while learning with her, most of the work was going to happen to me. It was like my commitment kind of thing. And she helped me rewire the experience of memory. So from that traumatic experience of, like, watching, like, you watch your like watching my mum pass, so transition from life to death, and seeing that it was chaotic, but it was beautiful as well. So at first, every time I think about it, that's the memory I had. To rewiring it to it, that's why I smile every time I talk. It's kind of, people at first might look at it and be like, oh yeah, my mum died, and I'm smiling. And that's because I've rewired the experience of the very first thing that comes to my mind is me having a coffee with her, and there's a sun in the background, we're laughing. Right. So there is this evolution that occurs. And I mean, I haven't gone and seen the tombstones of my little quotation in like 3-4 years. I don't need to, because I can think about it. It feels great with me. And I know and feel like their love inside me. And that's all there is. And that's all it'll ever be.
Wow. What was the process that helped you get through that? Is there a specific name for it?
I stared in front of a wall for like 3 hours. So that's what I did. And I was I was inches away from the wall, just staring at it and feeling all of this pain because and like my mom meant a lot to me. And I, as a kid, I even thought about anytime I had a bad idea, like something bad was going to happen to my mom, just as a kid, I used to violently shake my head left and right as a
Mm,
superstition, because if I did that, it means she's protected.
mm.
And so I that was my childhood growing up. Um, and and then all of a sudden, and she was just gone. And I think that experience, it's if you're gonna hit rock bottom, you wanna swim in every crevice of the bottom and collect every piece of experience and feeling. You don't need to know why. That's one thing that I said. I just knew I didn't know why I had to do this. All I knew was that one day there's a polarity that occurs because I'm swimming around the entire bottom. I will have I would have explored every nook and cranny so that in the future, when someone is presented, when I'm on a podcast, when I'm talking, that I can share these bits of wisdoms that otherwise wouldn't have been there because I would have hit rock bottom and I would have quickly pulled out from other people. And then I wouldn't have actually explored that bottom. So I don't know much more than just that this person's dead. I grieve a lot. I go and see their tombstone. I cry and I never have fully healed from that, but that's okay. It's an onion. It's sensitive. I'm just going to keep going on and fighting my own version of death, making sure that I never face death and do this, do that, survive as long as I can, because that was scary, because that's a trauma that I experienced with a loved one. And now I don't want to experience that either. Oh, crap. I'm now dying and now I'm on a deathbed and I have no choice but to face this now.
Mm. That's fascinating. There's that quote by Jung of the tree which reaches up to heaven has roots that reach down to hell. Like you have to get into hell. But the actual rewiring process, what was, you said you worked with a coach, did you say?
Yeah, she was her name was Alice Amelie. She was a neurolinguistic.
Can you spell that out actually?
Alice Hameley.
Oh, Alice Hamley. Okay, cool.
Alice Hameley, yeah. I can never spell her last name properly. So.
That's right. Put you on the spot.
But she was a neurolinguistic professional, and we refer to her as a magician. She worked with Olympians and working on their mindsets. Like she was something else. And the things that she would do in front of us were just jaw dropping. Like she could hypnotize people right in front of you, trick them. The people think and knew that they were getting tricked or thought they did and still were tricked. Wow. Like they thought they were resisting it so much. That's how great she was at it. It's all the art of language, tapping into subconscious, changing people's images about how they see things. Yeah, and then anchoring. Like there's so like it's a pretty broad topic, but I sought her because I used to work a lot of deep subconscious stuff when in the PT field, because I knew for change what had to occur was actually was deep subconscious stuff. It wasn't the exercise, it wasn't the nutrition, it wasn't any of that. Like you just follow the science of that, you're going to get the result. But what keeps it is the actual rewiring. So if I say I want to change because I don't like the look of myself, to I absolutely love what my body can do and everything about it, that sounds good just by saying it, but there's so much deeper stuff that needs to be rewired and reworked. And so sometimes I found that it was working and other times it wasn't. And so she helped me fill in all the missing pieces so that when I did work with people, I knew when it wasn't working and what I had to do and the language I had to use. And so, yeah, she only worked with you if you were going to use these abilities or powers or skill set, whatever you want to call them, for good, because you can easily manipulate people. You can trick to get whatever you want. She says that's why you never watch television, because the psychology, they know it, they understand all this. It's not like only 5 people in the world know this. No, it's a very known whole level of psychology that that happens. And I mean, if you're going to have millions of dollars invested in an area, you're going to know this stuff, and you're going to present it in a way that you can easily manipulate people into essentially almost their entire lives thinking that that's the truth. And that's a whole nother topic there. But like, if I just use an example, like housing, why we believe we need to own a house, that's all predetermined psychology already done for you.
I mean, like I have friends who are making good money, and they just like I have, you know, friends who are making like probably $150,000 a year, and they just go and they buy a house and they live in that house. I'm like, you could buy the house and rent it out, and you could make money for yourself. Like you could have a passive income coming in, but no, there's something that they need to live in the house that they own. It's something deep there, and it's like, and they don't want to invest money because it's risky or something. So it's like there's this very like cut and dry path that the world has sort of set for us, and if you go on that, you're safe, quote unquote.
Yeah, and so much of it's like, if we go down that path of like properties and stuff, that belonging, that owningness, and you don't really own it. The banks still own it. You've just got a set of income that allows you to rent it off the bank. But you can own something, or the line that is always famous is, why pay for someone else's mortgage? Like, you could do your own. It was like, well, if you buy a house and then rent it out, then someone else is paying for your mortgage. It's almost like there's this challenge that it's not good to pay for someone else's mortgage. But that's one way someone is making an income and a lifestyle, while you're doing your own other way. So I never saw rent money as dead money. I think a house is the reflection of where you are at mentally in your life. And one of the biggest traps that I would always be scared to is, if I overcapitalize and live in something, I am then married to the potential capital gain of that property. So if I evolve and change and develop as a person, I actually can't exceed beyond the walls of my house unless I sell it or move out and rent it. And then, but I might have overcapitalized, or I might have done it in a way that doesn't allow for that, because maybe at the time what meant most was owning that house until it got to a point where I could sell it, and so I have to give up that part of my life and stay here for an extra year or 2 or 3. But I might have developed 6 months earlier, or get to a point there, but I'm holding off just because I'm in this cycle now. And so that analogy is always stuck by me. And when I look at things, like I just bought a house up in regional in Sydney, and I got it for 220, and it was like, it's good. It was a good purchase, but I don't have the stress of that, because I can still do whatever I want and still rent wherever I want. Like, we're getting ready to move again into a nice, beautiful double story here. And I'm paying for someone else's mortgage, which I feel great about, because that's their investment.
Yeah, it's not
just like someone else is paying for mine.
Yeah, you're helping people. It's money comes and goes. It's not like money isn't something that's scarce, and you know, if you change your mindset, the money will always be something that comes in waves and goes, and you just get more and more of it. But it's interesting about what you said about the house, because obviously I'm really into symbolism, and if you go into like a lot of times in sort of dream analysis stuff, but also in dream analysis, oftentimes, not always, it depends on who you are, but like your house reflects a version of you. It's like sometimes people have dreams where they'll discover a new room in their house, and maybe that means, depending on the person, that they're discovering like a new part of their mind, or like there's more of you available. Like, for instance, there are some people who, like, when they were kids, they got told that they couldn't draw, and so they stopped drawing. But actually your mind wants you to know that there's this whole other room of artistic creativity that you can access if you want to. And similarly, I mean, people's houses reflect who they are. If it's a clean house, if it's kind of hoarded, if it's you know, if it's kind of in a state of disarray, or if you live with other people or whatever, there's everything about your house is a reflection of you. And so I really like what you said about you can buy a house and then you kind of build your own confines in that way financially.
Yeah. That's, yeah. And I get it. At the same time, it's people's different goals. Like some people might value family so much that they want somewhere to be able to call home so that they can explore that. And that's their trade-off. And that's totally cool as
Yeah.
well. I think it's just important that people are aware that there's all these different ways, and just make sure that you know all those ways exist, because it is the best interest of the economy from an economical perspective to just put you in a place that you're overcapitalizing, so that you're paying interest off for the rest of your life, so that the banks are making as much money as they can off you, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the intention, is not to pay it off quickly.
Yeah, and I don't think there's malicious intent here, although there is some malicious intent, obviously, because there are psychopaths in the universe, and people kind of, I think a lot of times our ideology reflects whatever helps us the most. And so I think oftentimes I'm trying not to get too political in my life, but like I'm quite centrist, and maybe sometimes I lean right and sometimes left, but so hardcore right-wingers who are like, you need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you need to do it all yourself. A lot of times I think, oh, they're just really smart and hardworking, and they have the capacity to make $1 million business, which is why they're saying that, you know. And then people who want handouts, oftentimes it's, you know, they want to, anyway. So I think the system is oftentimes set up in a way that constantly puts you in debt if you kind of just follow the normal pathway. And like I knew people in the States who were, you know, waitresses and pizza boys, and they had a nice enough living because they worked very hard, but then they would like buy a brand new car, and it's like, you know, they just were doing what was kind of told to them to do, and it's just a way to constantly keep you enslaved and keep you in debt and keep you working forever. But it's interesting what you said about don't listen to TV, because I think about that a lot. I've been noticing, I mean, and this all kind of plays into the same image in my mind, but I've been noticing, like if I'm on Reddit a lot, for instance, I will begin to think like Reddit. I don't know, like I've noticed that if I go on it enough, I've noticed that Reddit it's like a human being, it's like an individual, and maybe each subreddit kind of forms its own version of an individual, but you'll have the most upvoted comment, which is the most popular comment, which ends up being it's like one person is saying it all the time with the exact same, they like a certain type of humor, you know, the kind of maybe punny humor. And I notice in the subreddit relationship advice, the answer is always, no matter what the question is, it's always, you should break up with them. Like it's immediately like, and so I've noticed even social media consumption is really geared towards, it makes me think a different way than I naturally would.
It's so full on. I was looking around, you probably would have seen me looking around. I could hear my phone vibrating. So I've actually got 2 phones. One of them's lost, and it's the one that I probably shouldn't have lost. So the reason I got 2 phones is when I was doing a bit of streaming last year to start growing my personal brand and build an audience around that. And because I did the branding pretty spot on, it was growing quickly, like within this all happened within 4 weeks, and I had a good little following. And then I watched The Social Dilemma, which, like, I am always 2 minds when I watch something, seeing from the both perspective. But what I did notice was that, and I saw this straight away. That's why I shut down doing it, because it didn't feel right. There is this in that particular world. If you have the charisma to present and to attract, you have the potential to make money. You're then married to an algorithm, and that algorithm is now your life schedule. Now, I built a business to pull myself out of it. Right? It's completely the opposite of my values and beliefs from that perspective. But of course, you're doing it for the people. But then what happens is those who aspire and admire, there's an actual dopamine addiction to wanting to see and hear from you. And so those people, whether they have certain insecurities, they'll invest money into you one way or another through the platforms. And I started to see that I was simply just a conduit to keep people on for entertainment, but eventually that they would put a couple of dollars here, there. And in that, I realized the big grand scheme of how I was being used for my talent. And then the moment that I stopped, that algorithm died. And I was like, this is wrong. And just, yuck, I just didn't feel right. So that was one element. But the phones was in that, have you seen A Social Dilemma?
No, I don't watch a lot of things, but yeah.
It's a Netflix's documentary. Basically, it's like I think the main guy, he used to be an employee for Google. And he talks about how there was an addiction issue with Gmail, and that they wanted to resolve that because it wasn't helping them. But there was this like, no, actually, that's what we want. So there's this whole psychology behind absolutely everything. How you use it. They're all constantly investing on the mind of psychological manipulation to keep you engaged and on. So what I did was, before I bought a second phone, I tested it out. I deleted the apps. What happens is the algorithm starts to change. And it notices that you're not on it anymore. So what it does is it uses Chrome or other internet provided apps to slowly send you little tiny bites of saying, hey, check your Facebook. And then it's through the URL now. And so if you're not aware of it, you go click on it, you open it up, and it's now you're looking at the browser version of Facebook. And you're like, oh, shit, I'm on it. I'll leave now, exit. Cool. Then maybe another week later or earlier, they do it again. And eventually what you do is, this is taking a bit of process. I'm going to re-download the app since I'm back on it again, and bang, you're back on. So my concept, which has worked really amazingly, is I brought a second phone so that I have a social media phone and I have a communications phone. So any communication, like I talk to my team through Slack, Messenger, anything that's an app that's social media based will sit on this phone. This phone has no SIM card. It can only be connected via hotspot to the internet. Therefore, they say like you can delete apps or all those kind of things, but it's gonna use the internet to find a way to get back that. Well, if I never have those in the first place, I can never be chased up for that, and I never do. So because they know that I have social media, and it's only active when I control the Wi-Fi to connect the hotspot to connect to it.
Wow.
So I'm conscious when I'm going on it, mostly for business or interacting and building networks, and from that perspective. And they're like, oh, he's on social media, so they leave me alone from my main phone. And it's worked amazing. I did that about a year ago.
I've been looking into social media and how to promote it, and I've noticed some, like you said, there's some fairly insidious things. So obviously, if you're a social media presenter, if you're an influencer, your goal at the end of the day, the bottom line is to keep people on the social media app for longer. That's it. Like, are they spending time on your page on the app? That's it, right? And I've noticed, so that's number one, is first of all, even if you're promoting wellness and health and all these wonderful things, you're actually still keeping people on the app for a long time, which is kind of a trade-off morally, I think. I don't know exactly how to balance these two things. And secondly, I've noticed that, so I watched a video about this and I tried it out and it worked. It was, especially if you have like shorter videos, you want to start them with an emotional tone. So I hate it when clients do this one thing, it's like, I hate it when clients don't niche down, like, and you start with this really emotional response, and then you talk more. And then instead of being a normal person with regulated emotions, who's just displaying a sense, an intellectual argument, you're suddenly entering this very emotional arena. And as we can see, I mean, social media has gotten to this super emotionally volatile place. In certain, I try to stay out of it. But I
I'm the
feel
same.
myself being drawn to it constantly. Like this, everyone has that hot topic that the social media presses that button. Like some people are environmentalists, and then every time you see a lake that has garbage in it, you just get drawn to it and how much you hate people and stuff like that. Instead of and the algorithms are programming you to watch people with heightened responses and watch drama. It's a lot of drama, and it's
Whatever you engage with, they're going to give you more of that. There's no right or wrong. Algorithms don't think in things of what's right or what's wrong. It's just more of that. But the issue that I personally think, again, from psychological perspective, is that people don't have the awareness of understanding that. So someone's entire worldview could naturally just be the outcome of a multitude of influences directly to keep them engaged on something, which means that they may have gone a complete different path if they had more so the free will of choosing what they wanted to be engaged with, opposed to, you've shown interest in this, so we'll give you more of this. So you went from, I had free will to engage in this, and then everything else was conditioned for me to take in more of that. And I'm very have you seen The Witcher? I always love referencing. Okay, so they're based off Polish books. Then they released as games, and now Netflix did a TV series on it. So they've done season 1 of it. Essentially, it's set like medieval times. He's a mutant, so a monster hunter, the Witcher, Geralt, his name is, and so he makes potions. He can drink them, and he slays monsters. But he's very neutral. That's his normal personality is neutral. While in the games, you get to choose which side. So there's the political aspect of that era. Then there's the racial issues, which is between the dwarves and the elves, and then humans being racist against them. And of course, there's political, there's wars, there's all this other stuff that happens. Now, him as a character, though he's a monster hunter, he doesn't necessarily kill monsters all the time, because monsters have personality in this world. So, like there's in the second game, and I'm not sure about the books because I haven't read the books yet, but in the second one, there's a troll that collects taxes, like this giant troll that collects taxes on a bridge. The bridge is broken, doesn't want to fix it. He's just drinking vodka, being drunk. And the people have said, like, we need to get this sorted out. And so you go and speak to him, or Geralt goes and speaks to him. His wife's gone missing, and he's not going to do anything until she's found. You end up finding that some bandits took his wife away and cut her head off. And then the head was used as a trophy. And so in that scenario, Geralt would kill the humans because they were the monsters, and would help that. And then once that, like, but you could do it either way, right? But in the way that he's presented, he's very neutral in seeing things for what they are, seeing that there's crap on both sides, but in the moment, what's the most righteous thing that is being presented? Who's the actual monster here in the situation? So I love that archetype, that kind of thinking, and I apply that to my life. It's probably very direct in sort of this being a good guy, but also sometimes being a good guy doesn't necessarily always get good outcomes. But I find that just way of being and thinking, and I apply that to social platforms. So when there's arguments going for and against something, I'm neither. I kind of just sit back and laugh and go on and do my own thing and continue to write and let the world do its thing.
Yeah, it's the best way to be. It's interesting that you say that. Like, first of all, video games nowadays are incredible, aren't they? Like they're just, there's so many lessons that you can learn in them. I mean, they're really becoming this form of media that's so rich in storytelling and in kind of moral lessons, nuance. But I came across a similar lesson in a history. I'm listening to a history podcast right now, and there's this woman who was her name was Margaret, and she was the wife of Henry VI. And Henry VI was a terrible king. He was I think mentally not not fit to be. The problem was that it was just lineage, and so whatever you ended up popping out first was whatever became king. And many of them were terrible. So this guy was terrible, and he was a weak ruler, and all these people were kind of vying for power. And one of them, Richard III, he no, it wasn't Richard III. It was whatever. It was a Richard, Duke of York, I think. He attacks Margaret's castle, and he's with his kingmaker. So the guy who's kind of his political, he kind of runs in the shadows, and he's a kingmaker. He makes people into kings. And she kills Richard, but the kingmaker gets away, and she lets him get away. He runs away, and she doesn't chase him. And that could have been an act of mercy, but he later ended up getting Richard's son and making him a king and usurping her. And so there's something, and this lesson was played out in multiple different eras, but to be a good person, you sometimes have to do very harsh things. Like, she should have killed him. And I've had to have that lesson too. Like, not killing people. Nowadays it's slightly like more toned down than that, but it's, I had someone who was kind of recently quite like being fairly toxic, who I considered a friend, and it was like, oh, I'm really being super nice to you, and now I can't be nice anymore. Like, I have to completely cut you out. And unfortunately in life, sometimes it's like you have to be people will make you into the bad guy, and you actually have to take that role on sometimes, and that's okay. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm totally, with same thing. I think in business you see it all the time. Like, people have this idea of just wanting to help everyone, but unfortunately it's not always going to be the case, and people have their own life experiences. Sometimes people decide that you're the bad guy from some form of trauma that they're currently going through, and their lessons, and it's easy to just fall into like, there's something wrong with me, because you just genuinely want to be the best for everyone in every moment, but you can't. And I think if there's an acceptance to that, life, I know in business, life is just much, much easier, because you're fully present in the moment, but you also understand that it can be short-lived and might live for a long time. You might go through a good, strong period with them. Then something bad might happen. You can't carry it on as yourself. Otherwise, you're going to age 30 years in like 5. And it's not going to be right or healthy. And the same thing goes with relationships and actual like love interests, friendships. So I had a friend that mentioned it before, because someone else was like, they didn't understand if I like hated people or not, because I was just direct at times, but I was also so loving and giving. Like, I'm very empathetic from that perspective. And she said that it was really, I found it to be really nice, that it's just the way I am, because I know what I want in life. And so it's just how I'm presented, but he always means well. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, I can say how things exactly how they are, provided that I've lived the experience or I'm well equipped to provide it. And then it's kind of like, do or don't. And I'm not going to be impacted either way, but if it's not in alignment with the way I'm going, then we might not be friends, or this relationship has to end. And that's totally okay, because there's someone else out there who fits you better with a friendship or a business partner or a service that you hire. Like, doesn't matter what the modality is, the principle always plays out the same.
Yeah, I could see how, especially with clients, like, you could try to cling on to clients with and try to do something that they are asking that isn't quite right for you, or not quite the right fit for them. And it's again kind of a scarcity mindset of like, I need to have every last client.
Yep. And the saying always goes like, when you let them go, you get like you can't say better, but the more suited quality clients that you for where you are at the moment. And vice versa. So
I want to go back to, you said while I'm here, I'll get some free advice from you. You said that you built you had a small brand that you were streaming, and in 4 weeks you built it up to a nice little audience. What do you think is the best way to build up a small brand fairly quickly?
I think you just have to know thy brand. That's my main principle is, if you're going to create an entity, imagine it that it's a tree, for example, like, or whatever you want it, like anything, but we'll just go with a tree. And the only way to draw the tree is with dot to dot. So you know it's an outline, but you're like, that doesn't look right. But when I join the dots, it's a perfect tree. So to know a brand, you've got to explore all the areas of who it is that's listening to the brand, why it's presented, to how it's presented. You're almost an actor in the brand because it's suited for a specific type of person. Like my brand is very so if my Spiral brand is very altruistic, it's very visionary, because they're my type of clients too, and I'm that type of person too. My personal brand is very deep, can be very dark. It's expressed in this creative feeling, like, and it's completely different. So when I'm both at, but then if I'm with like friends, or at the moment with my housemates, I can be a massive troll. Like, I am just a jokester, right? But I can't be that in Spiral, or I can't be that in my personal brand. It's CDY, my CDY Productions brand. So because it's not what I'm aligning in the moment in time. So branding is literally solving a problem at a specific moment in time for someone. That's all it is. So if in the moment of time, my brand is there for someone, if I go back to why I grew for audience at that point, was to give this real, hey, you can be pretty messed up, but you can also get your stuff, you can be pretty sorted, and that's totally okay. There's this duality that's occurring. And there was a nice attraction to that. I had to be that, and I was that. If I'm the visionary and I'm constantly talking about progression and showcasing my lifestyle of where visionaries want to work towards to, in the moment of time, the pain point is that they don't have that. And in the specific time right then and there, they realize that now is the time for me to act on my branding. Branding is a couple of times a lifetime thing that you do. It's not a forever thing. So I am just talking a moment in time. And once that person has had that pain point and is talking that moment in time, they see me finally, and then they reach out. That's all. So that's all you have to understand when working out of a brand. And just like joining the dots, it has to make sense. You can't just join the dots from a tree and then it goes to a planet. Like it doesn't make sense. It's got to be consistent. Even then when you're presenting on social media, your visuals look the same, your copy is read the same, the way you talk, communicate, videos, anything that is presentation to someone from your brand, it's got to be consistent. If I started to post like the troll I am in real life on social media, there would be a disconnect. The brand's lost, and people cannot make sense of that, because most of my visionaries will be very very specific and driven, and one way. They might be jokesters as well, but that doesn't buy them into me, because that's not because they're putting on their visionary hat when they're trying to notice me. They're not putting on their jokester hat. The jokester hat might be great for a friend, so I could be a jokester. Then all of a sudden, no one's investing, but I've got a friend. So it's like, hey, look at all the friends I have. It's like, yeah, cool. You got all these followers, but all the followers actual conversion into your business and whatnot. So yeah, that's in my eyes, when building anything up with a brand, you got to have that distinction.
That feels so, there's something in me that's not willing, like someone unwilling to like, I've heard that advice in multiple times, like a bunch of times, because I've just done like a huge deep dive on how to do well on social media. And so, but there's something in me that feels, I guess part of it is maybe that I am scared about being, putting myself in a box and doing the same thing over and over again. And yeah, maybe that's part of it.
Exponential results stems from little things doing the same thing over and over again. Like it's always is the case. There are many things that I don't enjoy or didn't enjoy doing at the start, but I did it over and over again. And 4 years later, like there's 6 of us now, and that stems from doing I'm finally doing the writing. I've given everyone else a place for them to do the things that they love, the designs. It wasn't my love. I was just good at solving problems. My love's writing. So now I have the freedom to go and do my writing, to do that. But I think personally the problem is there's an attachment to the identity of what you're looking to do. So because again, it resembles back onto your you think the brand is you, but it's not. Even if your name is the brand and it's not you. The best metaphor analogy that I came up with this, which I use all the time and I love it. Imagine walking into a massive boardroom, right? And big table, all these chairs. At the very end, your logo is sitting there, right? So the logo of the brand. It's got, imagine drawing little arms and little legs, right? Like stick figures. And then next to it, there's someone else with a notepad taking notes because the brand can't write. Like it doesn't have the ability to take notes. You walk in and the brand goes, all right, Serene, where are you at this week? What's the KPIs? All the monotonous tasks that you had to do, where are they? And you're like, oh, well, I didn't enjoy that. I didn't believe in that. I didn't do that. I'm like, cool. Now the logo goes, all I need is money to survive. You need food and water. You've got that. You're covered. If I hired you to be the person to do these for me because I knew you were the best person to do that. If you don't do this, I die. Yeah. You live because you just need food and water. And so then there's this separation to know that you are actually just an employee to the brand and you are hired for a specific moment in time. If you're the director and the CEO, you just need to put the things in place so that you can move on and do the other things that you need to do. Or you could be the person who works in full-time because maybe that's what you love to do and you want to do. It doesn't necessarily matter. All that matters is the brand is separate to you and it's a child. And this child can only survive on money. And if you can't see that, then all of a sudden, the question that you should be asking is, am I suited for business? Is this right for me? Is this, if I can't look after a child, am I ready for kids per se, right? In terms of branding. Yes or no? I had the same conflict in my first year. First year of business, I made a lot of money very quickly. And the downfall of that was I didn't understand money. So I lost it all because I went and lived in some fancy house and, by the end of it, I realized I was working like 40-hour, 50-hour weeks, making like $2,500 a week. And then I didn't have time on my hands anymore. And then it's like, I need to change this about. So when I approached for help and it's like, this is what you need to do, I instantly was like challenged at that idea because it conflicted with my beliefs. But at the time, the belief that I had was wrong because I found myself in a situation where I was working 40, 50 hours a week. In order to work differently, I had to be separate to the brand. That was the very first moment that I learned, okay, the brand is not me.
Brand is not me.
Brand is not you. And if you're scaling and wanting to grow and you've got ambitions to build something that other people are going to be attracted to, the team that falls in love with the brand, not many people think from that perspective, you should build an entity that people should come to, whether they're a client, a staff member, a partner, and they're so happy to have you, work for you, be around you, work with you, that even if someone came along and tried to use money to poach because it's cheaper or they're willing to pay your staff more, they won't say yes to that because of the entity you've built at this brand they've fallen in love with. You've become so clear and specific about that. You can do that, then you're laughing because the brand evolves based on these people because you built for these people. These people then give you the feedback and you take on that feedback because you're not the brand. They are the brand now. They've associated the brand as with them. So you get this feedback and you're like, my ego could say no because I don't like that. Or it goes, wait a minute, that's my ego, my personal brand. But the entity doesn't have an ego. The entity goes, I'm serving you the best that I can. And at this moment, it's not the best because you're giving me feedback. I'm going to take on that feedback. I'm going to build new systems and processes. I'm then going to deliver it. If I can't make amends with that, so be it. The lesson was worth it. But the next person that comes on, they're going to be like, this is the best workplace I've ever worked for. Or I've never had a business or brand look after me like this. I didn't get that right. The brand didn't get that right from the first. It was simply a collection of experiences, and because it's its own entity, it's for the people, and it's taken on that feedback and created it for the people, and then your business life becomes easier and easier and easier and easier and easier. That's all it is.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this story that you kind of vaguely referenced of just like working really hard and doing the same thing over and over again for like 4 to 6 years, just spending all their time on the business and sacrificing everything at the altar of this business, and then just repeating over and over again until they have the secret formula, until they've just narrowed it down to a science.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if they can't let go of that control, there's going to be a cosmic joke about it, which is they will always be stuck to the brand. They think that they are the brand.
Yeah, I knew this. I'm interested in mythology, and there's this the devouring mother is a pretty common mythological symbol, like, but there's this other one, and I don't know what it's called, but it's something like the devouring father. Like Zeus's father Kronos, he eats all of his kids because it's predicted that one of them will kill him, and so he eats all of his kids, and then his wife puts Zeus away somewhere. He's raised by like fairies, and then he eats a brick, and so Zeus grows up and kills his father. But this is played over and over and over again. This story of the father who tries to kill his son. It's King David is friends with, anyway. I think King Solomon tries to kill King David, although it's not his father. But anyway, it's this thing where I think sometimes it's quite this masculine archetype of you have this brand and then you don't want the people under you to grow too much. And so I saw it in this coach that I know, who obviously I won't name, but he was a brilliant guy, excellent coach, like just he could like figure you out so quickly and push on your buttons so quickly. But everyone around him, aside from his family, who were wonderful people, everyone around him was not developed in the way that you would expect them to be if they had been around this guy for so long. And I think part of that was that he just couldn't necessarily stand somebody getting up to his level. Like he was scared of them having more power and control than him. I think. Now I'm just reading his mind at this point. I'm just making assumptions, but I think there is something there. If you need to micromanage everything in your life, you'll never be able to grow, because maybe the people around you can't grow and flourish, and your brand you can't scale if you're doing everything.
It's the irony in it is people can think that, like, and I get why they think for this. So they think if someone has that luxury to be able to grow and develop, the fear is that if they outgrow beyond me, then I'll always have to keep stretching a certain part of me, and then that's a responsibility to it, because then I need to keep improving. But if a person outgrows, then there is a potential that that person might move on. Now, if you have a team and so much of your business is revolved around specific individuals on the team, and they all decided to leave, you're then in a heap. And so it's a conundrum, because people think that, like, there's this constant fighting of trying to be like that, and then allowing them to get or move along for that. But what is forgotten about for most of the times in this class is that people, if you have built the strong brand, people don't work for you, they work for the brand. And if you allow the brand to evolve and everyone gets a say and has a opportunity to develop and grow the brand, I guarantee that people will stick with it, because they don't want to be a business owner. They want to do the thing that they love doing inside the brand. And so if they're having a direct influence on the direction of the brand, then they're seeing the growth because you're willing to show that. And so they're a part of something that's going to scale, and you're totally leaving it to that. But it has to involve in letting go of this owningness of it. Like, one of the practices I used to do at the start was I imagined myself saying goodbye to my team every day, because in my head, the business closed and I felt all the pain. It's like all the ego, like, no, this will never shut down. I put so much love into this. Once that dissipates, you actually honestly saying goodbye and you feel great. And thank you so much for being a part of the vision, that you start to actually see things beyond what was seen first, because you don't have this egotistical thing about it, because you're actually okay that your business could shut down tomorrow because you've played it so many times in your head. And therefore, when someone says, I think we should do this, you don't go, no, because that might shut down the business. You go, let's give it a shot. If it's right or wrong doesn't matter, because anything that's wrong in the moment you can fix. You can, how you react to it. So if one of my team, and they've done it in the past where they're like, let's try this out. I'm like, okay, go for it. And I knew it wasn't going to work, but the feeling for them to experience that was much better than me saying no and then saying no because I knew the outcome. Puts them in a box when they're not wanting, they're there for the company. Now the brand isn't theirs anymore. And if we pull back that and able to allow the brand to be everyone's,
Yeah.
you're going to find peace and you're going to grow really effectively, really easily. If that's obviously where, like, some people are addicted to being in the grind of working 50 hours a week. That's an actual addiction in my eyes for some people.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too, because I have personally noticed that I have this problem of like telling, especially friends, like giving advice all the time. I notice myself giving advice constantly, and although I'm right because I'm always right, it's not always helpful, because it's like I'm actually kind of taking away their autonomy in a way, or I'm attempting to. I'm not letting them learn their own lessons. And so there's this, as a leader, I mean, what you would do if you if you told someone not to do something is you would teach them that, I guess you would leave them always wondering, like, or you might even build up some resentment in them of like, oh, he didn't let me do this. I would have done this great thing if it was, then they have this imagery of like, oh, it would have worked if I had done it. But instead, if you just let them do it and explore, letting people learn their own mistakes and learn from their own mistakes and make their own mistakes is actually this strange letting go, but it's somehow, it's quite a powerful skill, and it's almost the best thing you can do in almost every situation, I think.
You know what the outcome of that is once you allow people to do that so many times? They turn around and tell you what they think is right or wrong. And you're like, okay, if that's what you think, then yeah, let's do that, because I trust your judgment in that. So yeah. It's given them the leadership to be able to step up and say, I've been in this space for a while now, you haven't. And I think this, and I think we should try that. And I'll be like, cool, this is not my brand. I just signed the papers to start it. So you, if that's what you think, and great. Otherwise, it's like, okay. And then because they know that based on past experiences, if I was to be like, no, I've created a pattern inside of their psychology to think this is the way it is, and I hate it, but I'm going to voice it because they're going to react like this. And if it's not effective in my eyes, but if that's how they want to do things, that's how they want to do things. Eventually, money can only tie you to something for so long. And I mean, I was having this conversation with a friend about, I was yesterday actually at a lunch on, where different generations, we aspire and want different things. Like the generation before us was all about working hard and money, and that's what was the most important part. The millennials, it's more about being a part of purpose, having more meaning, opposed to, yeah, money's nice and that's important, but it also has to be the purpose side of things is technically much more important than just the financial. And the next generation, they predict that it's more going to be about value based. Like they realize the younger generation realize that they can now make money pretty much in everything because they grew up around YouTube. They see how people make money. It's not actually a hard concept. They go on eBay, they trade. Like money isn't ooh, this is tough to make and do. It's more about, now that I've got the money, what do I do with it? And so value, things that are very valuable to them will be the next important, like the thing that they need to be around. And it could be people, it could be things that they collect, it's perceived value. So like things like Bitcoin and stuff like that would be very attractive to them.
Mm.
And that's just the thinking that happens. And so I see it a lot because brands that are much older would come to me because there's two things that they realize. One, their clientele, because most people build a brand eventually to sell it on. So there's saleable value to it because they want to retire now and move the business onto. That's what people forget with a brand is your clientele age with the brand. And so if you're not branding to the next generation and what's most important to them, you're actually going to be left behind. So when you go to sell the brand, they're going to look at it and be like, well, what's your clientele? Your clientele are going to die with the brand.
Yeah.
They're aging as well.
Yeah.
So if a strong brand will understand that and progress and move across that. I was saying there was two things for so the age of the brand, for the importance, and the rebranding to a more younger audience, so that you're understanding that perspective, so that you can sell it. You should be able to sell your business when it's time to. People are going to look at the numbers and see, well, what's the direction of it?
Well, in selling your business, even if you're not going to sell your business, it's a good idea to prepare it to sell, because preparing it to sell probably means that it can run autonomously without you, right? And so even having, there's this really good book called 1 Minute Manager about a good manager's role is to take away tasks from employees that they don't need, and essentially to let them do their own work to the point where he could leave. Like, a good manager actually has no work to do because his employees are running everything so smoothly. It's like cogs in a machine. And it's like the 4-hour work week as well. It's like you want to eventually have a brand that runs itself. I mean, maybe you don't, but if you're getting it ready to sell, that's what you want to work towards anyway.
Yeah, I think in my eyes, like, people get into business wanting to do something different, and importantly as well, it's to buy them a certain amount of financial freedom, or make them more money than what they might have been tied to having a job, essentially. Most people, though, no, I can't say most people, but like a lot of businesses might not actually be making that kind of money because they don't understand money from that perspective. So they might not be taking home that much. It's one thing to say your business earns X amount of dollars, millions of dollars. Another thing to say it only profits a very small amount. And that's the millions isn't impressive. It's what's at the end of the day, how much time do you have back and how much profit did the business make? And you can take those two things, then you've got a pretty sweet business. And I think that's where businesses should focus on growing towards, opposed to just doing the thing that they love. It's still an investment. I think business is the best investment on this entire planet. That's my opinion for that, because you have the ability to continuously make and improve the business. If you can be detached from, ironically, money, in the sense of reputation has to be the most important thing. Like I can set up a brand to scale really easily, get all the psychology, then I go the other way and tell people don't do it. Instead, build your brand reputable and then scale effectively. Because if you're going to grow, if you just do the work and you follow the principles, you're going to attract. But if you attract too quickly and you have a poor delivery, reputation is affected. You now have to do twice the work to either repair that reputation, or eventually your business is just an ego-driven thing that you're just like, yeah, look at all I do, and you're not actually making a lot of money because everyone's talking bad behind your back. But you've got a lot of eyes on you. But that's not that great. So
yeah, interesting. Reputation is it's one of those fundamental human characteristics. Like, it's something that's kind of evolutionary, isn't it? I mean, I listened, there's this interesting, so reputation is so important, it kind of transcends humanity. Like, there are these so there's this interesting idea that we're evolved to cheat and we're also evolved to spot cheaters. And those two parts of us are really, really well developed. But if you look at vampire bats will, they have groups of females, and the females will go through and they store blood, I guess, in their cheeks, and then they squirt it into every baby's mouth in the hive, not a hive, whatever it is, nest. And so if one mother doesn't get enough blood that day, you know, all the babies are still fed constantly. And so what these scientists did once was they took the blood out of a vampire bat's cheek, and so she thought she was giving blood, but she wasn't. So the other mothers saw her not giving blood to all the babies, and then what they did was they gave blood to every baby except for hers. And so essentially they have figured out a way to find cheaters and then take them out of the gene pool. Like,
wow.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, so reputation is just everything, really.
Yeah. It's key fundamental for growing and scaling a brand. You tick that off. I'm in business to have an easy life. Like, at the end of the day, I don't want to be driving in traffic. I don't want to be waking up and starting at, well, I mean, I wake up earlier, but not starting at 9 o'clock. I don't believe in the 9 a.m. start. We all start at 11. That's like just a fundamental thing. Is if I can do it, so should the team be allowed to. So I create this whole idea around that. And if I want these ideas to be prime and people to take them seriously, reputation has to be the biggest thing, because people will then, they respect what you do, how you do it, and they like how you do something isn't going to affect them. If they have different beliefs, they're not going to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to work with them because they have these kind of beliefs that are different to mine. So reputation is what keeps clients around. It's what attracts new clients. It's what brings in referrals. It's what, it just, to me, it's what grows a very easy business. It attracts the right staff members, people who are genuinely in love with the brand opposed to money. There's reputation is the key.
That's why I find the philosophy of being honest like so important. I mean, of trying never to lie, which is it's interesting, but when you get down to it, like I guess most of it is, it's often like not lying in smaller situations as well as larger, like not telling those little white lies. And I have found that even in times where it's been really, really hard to tell the truth, doing it has actually helped me enormously in the long run in terms of people who trust me, and just like the consequences that I thought would be there are almost like they've never been there. Like I thought that somebody would have hated me for saying something, you know, or whatever it is, but it's always been like maybe an uncomfortable moment, but an enormously positive one down the road. And I've also found, I mean, this is kind of a tangent, but I had this friend who like, she's trying to find a guy, and she's like, yeah, they always end up like being in relationships or just doing these really awful things. And I was like, what I do is, again, giving advice, but it was I said, what I do is if somebody lies to me even a little bit in any situation, they're just out. Like, I mean, a friendship is, I'm not going to like immediately cut an acquaintance off and never talk to them again, but they have a red flag. And, but in a relationship, it's like, that's a huge problem. Like this is it's something that I'll inform someone about, and then I will like make a huge deal out of if they lie to me about any small thing, or even if I see them lying, because if you just follow that up, you probably won't be betrayed later on, because if they don't lie to you about little things, they probably won't lie to you about big things. And yeah, I don't know. It's worked for me. This entire philosophy of honesty has been incredibly helpful.
When you share that to others, do they take it on themselves as well, or to give it a trial?
My good friends have. A few of my good friends have. I think one of them had we had a conversation, and then he said, I won't go into it, but he said, he told me, I asked him a question, he told me something, and then later on he made quite a life-altering decision based on this one conversation. And then later on he said, I realized that I lied to you and I lied to myself. And having this conversation made me realize that I was lying and that I shouldn't be lying. And then he made a very positive change in his life for the better. And so, but the girl that I talked to that keeps getting betrayed said, her response to that. So I said, you know, I'm in a relationship now, but I said, if I was dating somebody, like when I was on Tinder dates and stuff, if somebody came to a Tinder date and they didn't look the same as their photo, well, that's a lie. Like you've actually lied to me. And so I'm not going to continue this date. Like and she said that's quite extreme. And I think it was quite extreme for her because she was used to constantly giving people the benefit. She called it the benefit of the doubt. And I will give people the benefit of the doubt, but I would call what she did letting people getting away with lying to her. Mm. And so, I mean, she found that an extreme response. And I think her constantly getting betrayed because of overly trusting people, I think was a result of that. Yeah, depends though.
Yeah. I could totally relate and understand that from that perspective of how perception that's being shown to you, and then instantly being like, okay, if that's a like if I use that example for like what's happened, how you went with that, the part of me also thinks that I observe a bit beyond, so I go, there's this presentation and it's false. Yep. But then also, what are the deep, it could be trauma or insecurity that allowed someone to be like that in the first place? And so it's almost, it's easy to kind of be like, yeah, like that's not on in that sense. But I would explore with someone why they think that they had to do that. And I've been like in my dating world, I've been catfished before, and I remember being younger and being so upset. And when I found out, and then they'd send me what they actually look like, and they didn't look that bad. And it's like, oh, well, what's going on in your mind to think that you had to portray this visual look, or like, and because the mind was beautiful and I was attracted so much to the mind and the conversations and that, but then the visual was different. But why? Because and so that makes me think always that if I'm speaking with someone, I always used to make this I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, and I used to have friends. The joke I always had was, well, I mean, it wasn't really a joke because it was real, but I could be friends with the most nerdiest geek and also the most troubleless, if that's a word, the person with the most trouble who was in and out of jail. And I had that massive range of friendships with people because the mind was so fascinating in terms of the friendships and the connections that I had, that I could see beyond people doing what they did, and it was in their maps of reality and what they thought was right. And even though I didn't agree with mine, but I saw past that so that I could experience their world and learn from them and see that. And I try to bring that as much as I can. It's tricky though, because like the world is constantly, well, the social media world is constantly bombarding on what's judgment. Like, are you going to support someone who has an opinion but isn't very popular? But when that opinion does become super popular and you sort of agree, do you then show your support? Like, there's so much psychological things that are happening, and if we're aware of it, it's like, okay, well, it's just exploring. It's not agreeance, but exploring why that's occurring. That's how I operate. I'm not perfect at that. Like, I'll still, like, judgment can still overcome me. I'm still human from that perspective. But it's a practice, I think, is if more people did it, I wouldn't think that there would be much of a divide in terms of opinions and thoughts, because at the end of the day, what you come back to is that everyone's actually correct. Everyone's right in thinking the way that they got to think. And so almost challenging is being challenge someone is just from an ego perspective, because they're correct. They're right in thinking in that way. And so are you. So you only share your opinion when it's requested, per se. That's kind of like how I look at it.
Yeah. There's so much there. I think it's true that I think oftentimes we've had experiences in childhood that have made us create a rule of, oh, don't do this, or I always do this. Like your friends who were in jail probably got hit as children, and now their rule is, I need to be the meanest person in the room or else I will be hurt. And then that's what happens. Like that's as a 6-year-old, that logic makes perfect sense, and it works, and it gets you through. And I think oftentimes a 26-year-old hasn't unlearned that yet, because they haven't been given the ability, or they haven't been given the tools to like unlearn certain traumas and integrate new tools into their lives. And I think oftentimes everyone is right. Like in these giant divides that we have, I think both sides are usually right and also wrong. One that sticks to my mind is I was watching some videos on like fat positive YouTubers. I'm just kind of fascinated by this ordeal, this kind of war between the fitness community and fat positive. And it's the fitness community saying like, their message is, you can't be healthy when you're obese, and also your body is wrong, your body is not good. And then the fat positive community is saying, obese people are perfectly healthy, it's not unhealthy to be obese, and also I can love my body. And so both of those are right and wrong, because actually I think you should love your body. I think even if you're obese, you should have love for your body and work out because you love it, and be appreciative that you have this wonderful body. But also know that, like, you know, you can't ignore that diabetes is correlated with obesity. You shouldn't like ignore the facts, but it doesn't mean that you don't want to hate yourself. And I think a lot of the bodybuilding community is they're attacking these fat positive community, because I think a lot of them come from a perspective of self-hatred, and that they carry around even to this day, even if they are 200 pounds of lean muscle. Yeah.
That world is, I mean, I grew up, I had an ex-girlfriend who was a fitness competitor, and I got to see that world behind the scenes. And for someone who was always about like the self-love and approach fitness from that perspective, there was trauma and that you'd see a lot of, but also influences of manipulation in terms of what's the attraction model to get you on stage to present that way. And I mean, at the end of the day, there are people who legitimately look at it as a sport, and that's great, and they're actually great and healthy. So, but for the majority of people who come and go in that space, I've seen that world of it. I can only understand it if the fat positive community is also eating healthy. If they're demonstrating self-love in all areas of that, then power to them, because that's what you're supposed to be. Obesity is not a thing. I never looked at clients and it's like, I want to lose this. I'm like, do you think you're going to be happy when you lose that? They're like, yes. I'm like, do you really, like, do you think you're going to be? And then I told them, situate all the psychological aspects of them. Are you actually, will you be okay with this? And then they explore and be like, oh, not really. Like, but that's not the issue. It's not the body. The body, it's your own love for yourself. And how does that look like? Was it fitness? Is it food? What are your relationships like? Are you with somebody who loves you? Do you have supportive friends? Self-love isn't just body positive. Like it can't be, because if you truly self-loved from that aspect, you would eat well. You would not smoke. You would go for hikes. You would really build friendships up. Like there's so much in that. So if they embody that, then in my eyes, that to me is correct. That's the truth. If not, then I can see, if the attack is on like, well, you're body positive but you're going to McDonald's, then you're fat positive but you're going to McDonald's, then you boast about self-love, but the self-love isn't actually there. What is the deeper thing that you're looking for? Is there hatred? Is there anger? move at the bare the bare of it all, the bare bones of it all. Humans are always attracted to movements. It gives meaning. It gives the mind meaning, purpose here. And you'll find that anyone that has an interest in something will genuinely have a movement to follow and will support and love and back up and then they go. And there are millions of movements in there. Hundreds of movements getting made every single day. And then there are trends that get popular because people's experience is similar, like mine, and then they see that thing and they're like, I feel safe and whole because of being a part of this movement. This movement is now my identity. And that I now have to fight for it and go to war with it and destroy the enemies. This is going back to like how we do it with the medieval aspects of it. It's just the modern day version of it is linguistic movement and people are backing and supporting. They're all correct and they all stem from some form of experience of an individual or based on what they've gone through. Yeah, and my brain just goes like thinks straight up like that when these kind of situations occur, and that's why I go there. There's no right or wrong. They're all right. They're all wrong.
You're such a pattern matcher. I think I have a similar brain to you, and it's I don't necessarily notice it a lot, but it's you constantly see it seems like you constantly relate things together, like you're always connecting the dots. That art in your room, did you draw that?
The what in
there's a drawing on the, did you draw that?
This, no, actually the fitness competitor I was talking about, she drew this for me.
Oh, beautiful. Right?
Yeah, I love it. So it's my he's one of my favorite characters. Final Fantasy video games that I love was one of the first games I was ever introduced, and there obviously there's a love interest there. She's like a leader of more of a resistance, very comical. He's very quiet and kind of falls into a leader role. And so growing up, I found a lot of relativity to that. And then they go into space time. It's pretty big concepts for a video game that was like, I don't know, came out like in the 90s. And yeah, but like she drew that, and that was, I think it was a Christmas present. And I have I've had girlfriends after that were just like, why would you keep that? As if the attachment was to the person opposed to the actual beauty of the art that's kept.
Yeah.
There's no ego for that.
Yeah.
And so I put it there because it plays a huge part in my like everything around me is intentional from my own brand of who I am that people can pick up on. And that would be a thing. And even that metaphor there, I guess if we look at it from a metaphorical perspective, the fact that I can put something of an ex-girlfriend that was designed for me and be at peace with that and not even look at it from that angle also speaks loud in terms of my personality and how I am and how I think and be. And then that transcends more into trust that is developed between the people that would come into my life, listen to this, watch this, follow me. Like that's all that stuff. The ideal people are always going to be attracted. Brand is I know I'll go back to it, but brand is when it's so specific, you never have the wrong conversations. You're always attracting like-minded people because psychology's already done all the work. And I'm just tapping into what I love and showing in an intentional way who I love to talk with. And so my joke always is that once you really know your brand, you never have the wrong sales call. You never have the wrong partnership call because people push themselves away straight away. Like they would have heard me or watched me or seen me and be like, that's not the type of person I need in my life or one around my life, which saves me a whole lot of time, which is something I value. And there's no right or wrong because there's other people that is perfect for them. Like there are people perfect for me.
I love how you rerouted your mindset. So there's no failure in this context. It's all success.
There is literally none. Yeah.
Yeah. Even what you said before was really helpful. I'll wrap up pretty soon, but you said before, I don't know, you said something about like fine tuning. You kind of mentioned fine tuning the instrument as in building up your success. So you're making mistakes. I think you said you weren't that successful at first, or you didn't quite know what to do at first, and then you kept repeating over and over again.
Yeah.
And initially with this whole brand I'm running, this thing I just started, I thought, oh, I didn't niche out quick enough. I made all these mistakes. And then I was like, oh no, I'm just in the process of fine tuning. It's not that I've failed or that I've done the wrong thing and it's irrevocable. It's just that I continue to fine tune, and iterating is the process of working through that. So that was very cool. Go on.
No, were you gonna say?
I was just gonna start to wrap it up. This was like an awesome conversation. I didn't think when I began to talk to a marketer that I would end up talking about death and the beauty of death. And I mean, the entire thing, you have a very philosophical mind. I wasn't expecting, I guess I read some of your LinkedIn posts, and they were more than just like, build your brand up. They were they had a lot of depth to them, which I think is reflected in your writing. So I think that's what attracted to me to your character at first. But
I am trying to be more, so LinkedIn there's something about LinkedIn that is tricky to, like, my Facebook is where I actually build up my business and where my network is, my business network, because I get to portray a lot more of my writing on there. Then the cap is nowhere near as LinkedIn cap. So as a writer, that annoys me, because you can't, if I want to be expressive and talk about a topic, it's not really share, but it's more, I get it, because LinkedIn is more like taking as much information and then get off it. But it is something I want to be able to portray more on there. Though it's Facebook really where you get to see a lot of that stuff. LinkedIn is it's probably like 10% what Facebook gets.
Yeah, except a lot of, I like LinkedIn. It's, there's been a lot of, you don't get to connect with CEOs in quite the same way on Facebook. It's a.
That's correct. Yeah. So I got to try and find my combination of love, and maybe I just start posting that up and see what the reaction would be like in terms of value if I was to write up, like, and share my creative pieces on there. And that's next. And LinkedIn to me is fairly new still for me. So, but it's done wonders for me in terms of the people that have come into my life, or businesses. Even one of my staff came from LinkedIn and wrote up a massive, beautiful post to why they wanted to work for Spiral. And I was like,
ooh,
we're about a month away from hiring him. He's been with us for a year now. So it was like, I appreciate LinkedIn from that perspective. And now I just want to kind of combine the two loves and hope that LinkedIn will accept me as the creative that I want to be on there. So
we'll see. Good luck in your ventures. I mean, I'm sure you've got many ahead, and even if that doesn't work out, you're just constantly iterating. So you will find success through that, I'm sure. God willing. All right. Thank you very much, Claudio Conte. Where can we find you?
Well, you can forward on LinkedIn specifically. You can / and write brand-specialist. So I've got the the URL for that. You can also find me on spiralorbdesigns.com.au, or you can search me up on Facebook as Claudio Conte, which my name will be up as well. Yeah, I do have my personal brand website too. That's CDY, so C for cat, D for dog, Y for yacht, productions.com.au. So if anyone was to look at it right now, it's still the old website, and the new website should be up in like a couple of days, I reckon. Yeah, that's it.
Great. Until next time. See you later.
Thanks for having me, Sari.